Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, I want to be talking about my week number 12 Thanksgiving game start or sit decisions. We're going to be discussing the Bears at the Lions, the Raiders at the Dallas Cowboys, as well as the Buffalo Bills at the New Orleans Saints. And I'm going to be telling you guys whether I believe you should start the quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, as well as tight ends in all of those matchups. But before we could get on into the in-depth breakdown of the games on Thanksgiving, I would like to ask, if you are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, to please make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below. Not only is it free, we put out content every single day to help you guys win your 2021 Fantasy Football Championship. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure to hit that like button down below. It would help us out a ton. And if you would like to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFNTSY. So without further ado, let's get into my start or sit decisions for all three of the Thanksgiving games. We begin with the early game, the Chicago Bears at the Detroit Lions. At first, we'll start by discussing the quarterback position. So in this game, it seems very unlikely, it seems highly unlikely that we see Justin Fields be the starting quarterback of the Chicago Bears due to the injury he sustained last week in that game up against the Baltimore Ravens. Thus, we are going to be seeing Andy Dalton be the starting quarterback of the Chicago Bears. And since I project this game to probably be a complete and utter snooze fest where there are not very many points scored, and this is a defensive battle, although the Chicago Bears defense is nowhere near as good as it has been in the last couple of years, and even though the Detroit Lions defense isn't all that good, I do not really see this being a very high-scoring game, and I don't really want anything to do with Andy Dalton or Jared Goff / Tim Boyle, because it seems very up in the air if Jared Goff is able to get the go to play in this game or not. I honestly don't think it matters. If it's Tim Boyle, you don't want to be starting him. Tim Boyle looked putrid last week, and if it's Jared Goff, even though Jared Goff is certainly a step above Tim Boyle, I don't want anything to do with him either. So Andy Dalton or either of the Detroit Lions quarterbacks, whoever end up starting, I do not want anything to do with them. So I would definitely want to be sitting them down on my fantasy football benches. So next up, we got the running back position. In this game, I love both of the running backs, David Montgomery as well as DeAndre Swift. Now, one of my biggest worries personally for DeAndre Swift in the offseason was, what was this guy going to do when they are down and out late in games? When the Detroit Lions are getting destroyed by another team, what's going to happen to DeAndre Swift? Will he be phased out of the game? Will they start involving Jamal Williams more? And earlier on in the season, we saw a lot of Jamal Williams through like the first two games of the season, but after that, it's been all DeAndre Swift. And even if this game doesn't end up going the Lions' way, even if maybe the Bears are able to put up a big point total in this game, and they're really beating down on the Detroit Lions, I still do believe that DeAndre Swift has a bunch of fantasy value, especially in the receiving game. So I would not be surprised at all that even if the Detroit Lions end up scoring like 12 points in this game or something, they get like 9 points, that DeAndre Swift could still have a very solid fantasy day for the Chicago Bears going up against the Detroit Lions defense. Even though I said that I do think this is going to be more of a defensive game, I think David Montgomery should have no issue at all running a train on the Detroit Lions defense. And I would not be surprised at all if David Montgomery was a top 10, maybe even a top 5 running back on the week. So I love both of the running backs in this game, David Montgomery as well as DeAndre Swift. In terms of wide receivers, there's really only one wide receiver that I'm very confident in this game, and that is Chicago Bears wide receiver Darnell Mooney up against the Baltimore Ravens last week. Even though somehow they lost to a team that didn't even have Lamar Jackson starting, Darnell Mooney had almost a 50% target share in the Bears offense. That is so crazy. A 50% target share, basically 50% of the time that the ball was thrown by either Justin Fields or Andy Dalton, it went the way of Darnell Mooney. And Darnell Mooney feasted in that game. And I think he could have a Thanksgiving feast in this game up against the Detroit Lions. Whether Allen Robinson plays or not doesn't really matter, in my opinion. For Darnell Mooney, I think he is the clear wide receiver number 1 on this team in terms of targets, so I love Darnell Mooney here up against a not-so-hot Lions defense. If Allen Robinson plays, I still don't want to be starting him. I don't know what happened this year. This guy has been successful with Blake Bortles at the quarterback position. He's been successful with Mitch Trubisky. He's been successful with 9-inch Nicholas Foles. But for some reason, he can't get it done this year. At the end of the day, whether he plays or not, I don't want anything to do with him. Marquise Goodwin is a very interesting play. Now, if you are in a very deep league, I would list him as a start, or if you're down tremendous at wide receiver, maybe you loaded up on running backs in the draft, or maybe you have a lot of injuries at the wide receiver position, then I would be fine starting Marquise Goodwin, but he is kind of one of those very high upside plays. He played well last week up against the Ravens. Will he be able to replicate it up against the Lions? It wouldn't surprise me, but if you're in the normal 10, 12 team league, I don't think you really want to be starting Goodwin. For the Detroit Lions, there is just zero consistency. Every single week, it seems like it's a new wide receiver playing well there, whether it's Amon-Ra St. Brown, Khalif Raymond, or one of the other wide receivers is up in the air, and the Detroit Lions offense just doesn't look very good at passing the ball, so I don't really think you want to be trusting any of these Lions wide receivers. When looking at the tight ends for this game before we close out the Chicago Bears at the Detroit Lions, we got the tight end position. TJ Hawkinson is a weekly start, but at this point in the season, I'm not going to tell you that TJ Hawkinson is a must-start tight end. If you have other tight ends that maybe you drafted 2 tight ends, then maybe you might want to be starting that other tight end over TJ Hawkinson, because the thing is, they're just not peppering him with targets like I thought they would, because hey, they really have no one to throw the ball to. Why not feed TJ Hawkinson? That has not been happening on a reliable basis. But with the tight end position being so shallow, in a lot of scenarios, you do have to kind of bite the bullet and play TJ Hawkinson. I think Cole Kmet is kind of one of those bottom-of-the-barrel tight end starts. He has been seeing a lot more targets as of recently. Last week, up against the Ravens, he was a complete and utter dumpster fire, didn't really do all that much, but the prior weeks, he was seeing a lot more targets game in and game out. So I think he's an all-right start this week up against the Detroit Lions. Next, we move to the Las Vegas Raiders at the Dallas Cowboys, but before we break that game down, I would like to let you guys know that we have partnered with Yahoo Fantasy this NFL season to bring you guys some great offers. Check out our exclusive limited time offer, which gets you guys 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. To qualify, you need to be new to Yahoo, sign up for an account via the link down below, deposit, and play. That's it. Yahoo will send us your name after you play in your first paid contest, and we will reach out to you via email with your coupon. If you would like immediate access, that is okay as well. All you got to do is email support@awesemo.com, and we'll get you set up right away. You can also claim a free $10 down below, which can be used to enter any Yahoo contest, including the $1 million Everyone Wins Thanksgiving Baller. Literally, everyone wins in this contest. You cannot lose any money. So make sure that you guys use our DFS tools and projections designed specifically for Yahoo to give you guys the best shot at winning big. Please make sure you guys do check out Yahoo Fantasy. The link is down below in the description. Next up, again, we got the Raiders at the Dallas Cowboys. Like I said, for the quarterbacks, Derek Carr was a fun player to start at the beginning of the season. The Las Vegas Raiders were playing so well. It's a fucking trick they play on us every year. And it seems to shock me every year that, oh, look at this, the Raiders start off so well, and oh, look, the Raiders are winning these games, and then out of nowhere, it all just crumbles down. It all just fades away. It all just goes away, and this offense doesn't look very good. While I like Derek Carr as a quarterback, while I think he is severely underrated, in terms of fantasy football for this week up against the Cowboys defense that looked really good up against the Chiefs. I understand they disappointed in that game. That wasn't the high-scoring affair that many believed it would be, including myself, between the Chiefs and the Dallas Cowboys. I just don't want to be starting Derek Carr for the Cowboys. Dak Prescott looked atrocious in that game up against the Chiefs. Despite the Kansas City Chiefs defense being complete and utter dog shit all season, Dak Prescott struggled immensely in that game. Without CeeDee Lamb, without Amari Cooper, it played an impact on him. But at the end of the day, I think he bounces back in a big way up against the Las Vegas Raiders this week. In terms of running backs, Josh Jacobs, whether the team's down by $1 million or up by $1 million, they just hand the ball off to Josh Jacobs 1,000,000 times. He's not a running back that I assume is going to be a top 12 running back, not a top 10 running back, probably not even a guy that finishes as a top 18 running back, but he is a reliable top 24 running back. He is a reliable running back number 2 on your team. So I think unless you are just have these crazy running backs on your team, right, where you're just stacked at the running back position, you're probably going to want to be starting Josh Jacobs this week. For the Dallas Cowboys, Ezekiel Elliott was able to practice today on Tuesday, so my assumption is that he is perfectly fine and good to go in this matchup up against the Las Vegas Raiders. This could certainly be a smash matchup for Ezekiel Elliott, where he finds the end zone multiple times and finishes as a top 5 back. So I love Ezekiel Elliott this week. I think if you're kind of looking at the bottom of the barrel and you are kind of with me on how this game is going to go, then you can start Tony Pollard. If you think that this game is going to be a shellacking by the Dallas Cowboys where they get up by a bunch and then they're running the ball out late, they're giving the ball to Tony Pollard, then you want to start Tony Pollard. If you somehow believe that the Raiders are going to crawl their way back into this game and maybe this isn't a demolishment of the Raiders defense, then you probably want to pivot away from Tony Pollard. I will list him as a start though, because I do think that this game could get ugly. The other running back in this game of note is Kenyon Drake of the Las Vegas Raiders. With the Raiders not playing too swimmingly as of recently, I just don't think you want to be starting Kenyon Drake. Now we move on to the wide receiver position. Now my assumption right now is we're to talk about the Dallas Cowboys receivers first, but my assumption is that CeeDee Lamb does not end up playing since this game is on Thursday. If this wasn't a Thanksgiving game and they were playing on Sunday, it seems a lot more probable that we see CeeDee Lamb suit up. Now, if CeeDee Lamb does end up playing, that will affect this list. So Michael Gallup, he's a go, whether CeeDee Lamb starts or is on the bench with that concussion. If CeeDee Lamb isn't in the game, then Michael Gallup will presumably be the wide receiver number 1 in targets on the Dallas Cowboys, and I believe he will be able to easily handle that up against the Raiders' defense. The player that CeeDee Lamb being healthy or not actually impacts, in my opinion, is Cedric Wilson. If Lamb is in, then I'm not going to tell you to start Cedric Wilson because I think being the wide receiver on the team, while that may be pretty solid on the Dallas Cowboys, I just don't love it, and considering I don't think that Cedric Wilson is all that amazing of a player. So if Lamb plays, then I'm not starting Cedric Wilson, but if Lamb doesn't play, then Cedric Wilson will slot in as the number 2 receiver on the team, and if this game does get ugly where they are really smacking around the Las Vegas Raiders, then Cedric Wilson does have the upside to be a solid wide receiver number 2 on the week. So when it comes to the Raiders, Hunter Renfrow is a start. Now again, I don't like Derek Carr in this game, but I do think that Hunter Renfrow just sees enough receptions, enough targets, game in and game out for the Las Vegas Raiders to warrant starting him weekly. And then for the other wide receivers, Deshaun Jackson, Bryan Edwards. Again, I just don't love this Raiders offense, so I don't really want anything to do with those other wide receivers. And then we move to the tight ends. I like both the tight ends in this game, Dalton Schultz, especially if CeeDee Lamb doesn't play. Without Amari Cooper, man, oh man, Dalton Schultz saw a bunch of targets last week in that game up against the Kansas City Chiefs, and I think that is entirely possible to happen again here in this matchup. So I like Schultz. Darren Waller started off the season on fire, right? He had like 19 targets in that first game, and then after that, he kind of faded away. Now, he hasn't been a bust of a draft pick, right? You didn't draft Darren Waller, and now you're just punching yourself. You're all disappointed. But he hasn't been as amazing as we probably all thought he was going to be after that just peppering with targets in week number 1. Up against the Dallas Cowboys, this isn't the most ideal matchup, but you'd be very hard-pressed to sit Darren Waller, a tight end who in any game could see that very high target share. Final game here, the final game of the Thanksgiving slate is the Buffalo Bills at the New Orleans Saints. Are the Saints going to finally pull the plug on Trevor Siemian in this game? Maybe, maybe not, but with Trevor Siemian probably starting in this game, I just don't think you can reasonably start him. He is not a terrible NFL quarterback. Like, he could win this game up against the Buffalo Bills, but it's not going to be because Trevor Siemian just slices and dices his way through the Bills defense. It's going to be because the rushing attack works well in this game and because he's able to just make the easy throws in the game to be able to advance them up the field. Trevor Siemian is an all-right NFL quarterback, but for fantasy football up against the Buffalo Bills, I understand the Bills just got ravaged by the Indianapolis Colts and Jonathan Taylor. I just don't really see that happening in this game. So Trevor Siemian, the third Manning brother, or the fourth Manning brother, will be a sit for me. Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills will be a start. I understand he wasn't all that great last week up against the Colts, was able to do enough in that game to be fine for fantasy football, but definitely not the game I expected. Here up against the Saints, I think he bounces back and plays quite well. For the running backs, I only like Mark Ingram. My assumption, just like how I think that CeeDee Lamb is going to be out, I believe that Alvin Kamara is not going to end up suiting up in this game. He did not practice today on Tuesday. I doubt he plays this week. I think he will be back, though, next week, and then Mark Ingram kind of waddles his way back onto the bench. But this week, up against the Bills defense, this is not an ideal matchup. I know, Jonathan Taylor, I just talked about Jonathan Taylor just ran amok on him. He scored 5 fucking touchdowns against them. I don't think Mark Ingram's going to be capable of doing that. I think the Bills' defense looks a lot better in this game, but I still would be wanting to start Mark Ingram because he is such a key point, such a key piece in this offense without Alvin Kamara. And then for the Buffalo Bills, they've got Devin Singletary, they've got Zach Moss, they've got Matt Breida. It is a fucking disaster. Throwing any of these guys into your lineup, to me, is just an insane person move. It really is, because it seemed like we cracked the code. It's Zach Moss early on in the season, and then as the season kind of progressed, it was more up in the air. And where we're sitting right now, I think your best bet is Devin Singletary, but then I wouldn't be surprised if Matt Breida just scored 2 touchdowns in this game. So stay clear away from the Buffalo Bills running backs. Now onto the wide receivers. I will be starting 2 of the Buffalo Bills wide receivers and no one else. Stephon Diggs kind of had a rocky road of a season. Definitely did not live up to my expectations earlier on in the season. I thought that Stephon Diggs had the potential to be the number 1, the best wide receiver in all of fantasy football. He hadn't lived up to those expectations early. As of recently, he's caught a little bit more fire. Shout out to the Hunger Games and Katniss Everdeen Catching Fire. That's a book, also a movie. I think that Stephon Diggs could have a solid showing in this matchup up against the Saints. And then Cole Beasley, while he's been getting the targets, he hasn't done much with it. Emmanuel Sanders, while he might see less targets in this game than Cole Beasley, I actually think Emmanuel Sanders is start worthy because he does have much more touchdown equity in this offense. Emmanuel Sanders has just been a lot more consistent this season, and like I said, he definitely has more touchdown equity than Cole Beasley, so I'm going to lean with Emmanuel Sanders in this game and sit down Cole Beasley. The New Orleans Saints wide receivers, it is so hard to dissect which guy is going to have the bigger game. Like, it wouldn't surprise me at all if Callaway just caught 2 deep balls in this game, had 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. Also wouldn't surprise me at all if Marquise Callaway had like 8 targets, 3 catches, 20 yards, and did absolutely nothing. And that's kind of the gamble you're rolling with every time you play Callaway. So in terms of fantasy football, he is far from a safe option. So I don't want to be starting him. And then Traquan Smith, same thing. Very kind of rolling the dice type of feeling. Really a big gamble when you're playing either of those guys. And then we move to the tight ends to close out the video. Dawson Knox one time, if you are with me, is going to be a start for me. For the Buffalo Bills, hasn't looked as great as he did earlier on the season prior to his injury, but also is still pretty involved in the Bills offense and could have a big game here up against the Saints. So you got to keep rolling with Dawson Knox. Sadly, Adam Troutman, who has looked a lot better as of recently, ended up getting hurt last week. Going to be out for 4 to 6 weeks, which sucks. Talked about him in the waiver wire video yesterday. I am deeply saddened by the fact that he got hurt because I loved him going forward for the end of the season. But now it's Juwan Johnson time. Juwan Johnson scored a bunch of touchdowns earlier on in the season. Hasn't really done much since. Maybe he does great in this new role here as the clear number 1 tight end, but I don't really want to risk that on his first game being that. So Juwan Johnson will be a sit for me. So thank you guys all so much for watching today's video. If you did end up enjoying, please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below as well as hitting that like button. I would appreciate it a ton. I love you guys all. Hope you have a great rest of your guys' day. And as always, goodbye.